Yeah, indeed. I mean, Brussels now realizes Trump is deadly serious about these tariffs. I think there has been some wishful thinking here over the past 2 months that he didn't really mean it. But now that the tariffs are moving ahead on Mexico, Canada, and China, and he confirmed on Friday the next step is the European Union, they're moving ahead. Now, you mentioned that statement that was put out earlier today. That was certainly an escalation in the wording that we've heard from the European Commission here behind me. The last communication that we had from a high-level Commission person on this subject was last week at Davos, when the EU's economic chief, Valdis Dombrovskis, said that the EU had potential retaliatory measures prepared, but they would be proportionate. Now we're hearing they will be firm. It might seem like a small change in language, but the EU up till now has been really not wanting to talk about this. Every time the Commission is asked about this, they pivot to how good the US-EU relations are and how damaging this would be, because trade between the EU and the US is a huge chunk of the global economy. So this will be much more serious to the global economy than the tariffs so far with Canada and Mexico. The IMF has calculated that this could cost the world 7% of its GDP if these tariffs go ahead between the EU and the US, because it's such a major part of the global economy. $576 billion was traded between the EU and the US in 2023. And if this escalates, it could cause real ripples throughout the world. Now, the EU is keen for that not to happen. That's why we heard that proportionate language. They're going to probably try to have exactly measured response to each step that this takes. So Trump will launch some tariffs and the EU will try to do something exactly in response. We haven't been given any indication yet about what those retaliations could be. However, we have some indication about this based on what happened during Trump's first term, when he slapped 25% tariffs on European steel, 10% tariffs on imports of European aluminum. The EU had back on U.S. luxury goods imports, kind of Americana things like motorcycles, whiskey, blue jeans. And so that may be what they do again, this time as a first step.
You leave my blue jeans alone. OK, so the EU position at the moment, to quote Hamlet, is if it be now, it is not to come. If it's not to come, then it be now. The readiness is all. It's not about if, they are waiting for when this happens. Exactly. I mean, that's the big shift in tone we saw today. I think up until Friday, the answer from the Commission was always, well, we don't really think this is going to happen, but if it does, we're ready. We have a plan in place. But now I think we're in a break glass in the event of emergency moment here behind me. They are ready to go. And I think they're expecting some kind of announcement from the Trump administration on this in the next week. Now, tomorrow, there's going to be a big EU summit here in Brussels with the European prime ministers and presidents. Keir Starmer from the UK will be joining that. On the table is the security issues, chiefly Trump's threats to Greenland. But obviously, they're also going to be talking about this economic threat from Trump as well. There's going to be a big effort to try to be speaking with one unified voice again, because every EU leader is stressing right now that the worst thing Europe could do in response to this is be broken apart, for each country to be trying to curry favor with Trump and betraying their European allies. So there's going to be a lot of talk about unity tomorrow, but we'll see behind the scenes if that unity is really holding up in the face of Trump's threats. Yeah, very interesting. And Keir Starmer arriving, as you say, tomorrow, kind of playing the grey man right now, as in don't notice me. I've seen some positive statements he's put out there, hoping that the UK avoids this. Dave, pleasure to talk to you as always on a cold-looking night in Brussels. Just bring back in for a second Ketavan, because Dave just mentioned the break glass moment. Right now, I think we're, 15 days into the Trump presidency. There are a lot of alarm bells ringing in different countries around the world.
Yes, and I think what he was saying about this speaking with one voice and discussing tomorrow the unity and not letting Donald Trump go at it alone with different countries, that is exactly what Donald Trump wants. Because there is a different thing to go after Canada separately, go after Mexico separately, go after China separately. We know what Donald Trump thinks about international alliances, and especially the European Union. And his strategy there is to divide and conquer. What he wants is for these different countries in the European Union to not speak with one voice. And you've already seen, for example, countries like Italy who are expressing the idea of maybe if we buy a little bit more of of U.S. products, maybe if we buy a little bit more U.S. weapons, maybe that will stop Donald Trump from slapping tariffs. And that is exactly the strategy of Donald Trump. What the European Union knows, whether they will succeed is a different thing, but they know that they are much stronger as a bloc when it comes to a trade war. They're much stronger to face Donald Trump and the United States as a bloc than they are each individual country alone. And the question is going to be, do they fall for this divide and conquer strategy, or do they, as Dave was saying, speak with one voice and respond very clinically, organized, and in par with what Donald Trump is going to be slapping on them if he does or when he does?
Ketavan, thank you. Well, talking trade wins.